Ми е интервју со литванскиот заменик министер за надворешни работи Симонас Шатунас. Mr. Шатунас, welcome to MIA studio.
My pleasure.
Let me start by asking about the goal of your visit. Part of your tasks within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs relate to the implementation of EU policy, but also strengthening the cooperation with EU institutions. Is your visit primarily focused on Euro integration, or there's any other goals, objectives?
Yes, indeed. At the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I am covering mostly European affairs and European politics, so I represent Lithuania in many EU discussions and formations. But here we are opening now a part of our diplomatic mission, part of our embassy in Croatia, so here it's going to be a section. So we will have our diplomats here working, and it's going to be our first diplomatic mission in the Western Balkan countries. So we want to increase our presence here in the Western Balkan countries because we see, especially Northern Macedonia, doing a lot of reforms. You are on a good track towards the negotiations of accessions to the European Union. So we believe that we need to be here. One thing. Another thing, so we will officially be opening the section here, but also I would like to talk more with your officials, with your colleagues about the negotiations process, about the reforms process, which is important, and we have a lot to share.
Okay, how do you assess so far bilateral relations between two countries? Where do you see opportunities for strengthening of this cooperation?
So I think that our relations are excellent. Next year we will be celebrating 30 years of our diplomatic relations between Northern Macedonia and Lithuania. And our ministers of foreign affairs, your new minister, they had just a meeting in New York discussing bilateral relations. But I think that we have also opportunities here what we can do more. We can really try to increase our economic relations, because yes, the trade is there, but the trade and the turnover is not so big. But I think that for your business people and for your state institutions might be interesting to visit and to have a look what Lithuania is doing in particular areas, let's say in life sciences or in military industry, because we are really developing certain sectors. And I think it might be new opportunities. Maybe we can look for alternative also businesses. I know that your country is doing very well with agriculture, and this is part of our trade, so we can also look how we can increase our trade in these particular areas.
You are coming to Skopje in light of the decision to decouple Albania and North Macedonia and the EU pact. Was another outcome possible, considering the significance of Euro integration process in the current geopolitical context, war in Ukraine, a conflict in the Middle East?
So I know that in principle we, Lithuania, we're making our decisions on a merit-based process. We believe that accession to the European Union is a merit-based process. We believe that the countries, when they're doing reforms, they need to move as fast as they can. So that's why we also, on a bilateral basis, we have a lot of so-called special technical projects, twinning projects, where our institutions are helping your various institutions in various areas how to do the reforms. But about speaking about decoupling, I don't think it's a unique in the history of the accession, because we, in our case, in Lithuania as well, when we started negotiations, it was a big group, but we were decoupled as well, and our colleagues in Estonia and Poland, they started earlier than we did. Then we did a lot of efforts to catch up, and well, we were able to catch up. We closed all together the negotiations at the same time, and big group of the currently member states, so we joined in the same year. So I would say this decoupling, it might be also a good argument how to do more, because in our case we did more, and that decoupling even triggered our reforms to do more quickly and more professionally.
Okay, we are talking about Copenhagen criteria related to EU membership, but how much is the Union integration process protected from bilateralization in the case of this country, especially when it comes to issues of history and identity?
Well, bilateralization is the reality in the accession process, and it was before as well. but at least in our experience, we also had bilateral issues with our neighbors. With Poland, with Latvia, we had different issues. With Latvia, it was a border issue in the sea, maritime border. With Poland, it was also an issue of minorities. But we were always able to agree about that we need to put aside the bilateral issues and we need to focus on the strategic issues. So we definitely not supporters, and we're not favoring bilateralization of the various issues in the accession process. We believe that it should, even though they are so much important, they need to stay aside the process, because then the accession process or the reforms that you are doing or other countries that are doing, they might be put aside by some other issues. So we are not thinking that's a good tactics or it's a good practice, but in our case we were able to find a ways how to deal with our neighbors.
Our Prime Minister Miskovsky recently presented in Brussels the idea on delayed implementation of his constitutional amendments in order to avoid further vetoes by Sofia related to identity issues. As far as you know, how has this proposal echoed among member states, and what's the Lithuania stance on this proposal?
Like I said before, we really believe that bilateral issues should not overshadow or impede or slow down the accession process or negotiation process. On one hand. On another hand, I think it's important that when the agreements are being made and then commitments are being taken, that not to stop the process or not to reopen something, the commitment has to be implemented, because it might create a new reality or it might create another delays. So our thinking is that as much as possible less bilateral issues, but if the commitments are taken, then it's better to continue with implementation and to move ahead with the process in principle, because that's the whole idea, how to clear the accession process, negotiation process from the various bilateral issues.
Recently Poland, not Poland officially, but there was conditioned Ukraine membership by historical issue. Defense Minister Vladislav Kosenyak-Kamysh saying that Warsaw would block Ukraine's accession until Kiev allows the exhuming of the victims in the Volyn massacre in the World War II. It's a history issue. What is your opinion on these announcements? Because this bilateralization and putting history in focus of EU accession is not very good for European Union integration process and Copenhagen criterion also.
Yes, I agree with you, and I think that in principle, like I was mentioning before, that bilateral issues should not really overshadow the entire big European accession process. So I understand it's big and old and difficult historical topics that it's difficult to put aside, but still we encourage to go on the bilateral dialogue track like we did from our history, what we know, and then try to continue moving with the accession process and trying to use the momentum, because now it's a momentum when Ukraine and Moldova and Western Balkan countries has proper attention in European Union, and as you see, the President von der Leyen and many member states are putting on top the enlargement process. So we believe that it's really a historic opportunity, it's a historic window, like it was in our history 20 years ago. It's really 20 years ago. This year we are celebrating a membership of 20 years in the EU. So we think that difficult questions has to be left for bilateral dialogue. Let's encourage bilateral dialogue, but on another front, let's move with the reforms that are necessary for the enlargement.
As you mentioned, Lithuania has been member of the EU since 2004. 20 years you are celebrating this year. You already mentioned that you faced some bilateral issues. My question is, do you face, are there bilateral issues like crucial on your EU path, or you were only assessed in a line of Copenhagen criteria? And what was Lithuanian biggest challenge on the EU path? You have many challenges you had, but What was
Yes.
the biggest?
So besides these bilateral issues that we were able to put aside and then to talk with our neighbors on the separate tracks, yes, we had much bigger issues because we, for historic reasons, when we were occupied by Soviet Union, there was a big nuclear power plant was built. This nuclear power plant was huge, enormous. It was making electricity not only for Lithuania, it was at some time making from 70 to 90% of electricity for Lithuania, but also providing electricity for Latvia, for Kaliningrad, for Belarus. So it was huge, but it was old type, RBMK type, Soviet type. It was considered by the European member states not a safe one. And there was a big request and even like a condition that we should commit to close it. So you can imagine that this power plant was producing a lot of electricity. Electricity was kind of cheap, but then still we made a commitment that we are going to close both blocks. It was 2 blocks, and it was a very, very painful decision, but it was a right decision. So now even some politicians are debating that it was a wrong decision, but now we see that it was a right decision to commit to stop that power plant and to start switching to alternative electricity generation capacity. So that was probably one of the biggest conditions and issues. Another one, clearly it was death penalty. Death penalty was still applicable there in Lithuania, but we also took a commitment to abandon it and abolish. Then also it was a lot of restrictions for the foreigners to acquire agricultural land. So we needed to change that legislation. There was also a lot of opposition because local interest groups, they wanted maybe to keep the possibility to be to have a priority to acquire land and then to do the agricultural activities. So I would say these 3, they were big ones that were really politically painful and got a lot of attention.
What about corruption? One of the biggest problems in the country, in our country and in Western Balkans generally, is corruption, inefficient judicial system, public distrust in it. Are maybe these the real reasons why EU is delaying the integration of the region, of the countries of the region, whereas the other obstacles like bilateral issues only serves as an addition to this?
Yes, rule of law is one of the key principles of the European Union. So even we have annual rule of law review of the member states. So there is a certain timetable when certain member states are being reviewed. So even in Lithuania we have a regular review of the rule of law. So member states has also a lot of commitments to abide to the very high standards of rule of law. So rule of law, I think it's a critical, and all the reforms that you need to do in the judicial reform in fighting the corruption, they're absolutely key. They're absolutely critical for the European Union member states, just to see that you are able not only to do the changes of the legislative acts, but also de facto implement and to fight the corruption and to increase the impartial elements in the judicial system. So I think that rule of law and fight with the corruption, judicial reforms will always be at the heart of the accession process. And as you know, it's a chapter, you will not be able to close all the chapters if the certain chapters on the rule of law, they are not closed. So they are critical. That's the entire logic of the European Union, that we need to all to abide to the same principles.
How Lithuania faced corruption? Do you think now maybe digitization was one of the processes that helped you on this way?
There was a lot of attention by a lot of political leaders in Lithuania. There were special institutions established. It's not only prosecutor's office, but it was a special investigations institution established that was especially tasked to fight the corruption, but also to increase the education.
We also have a special prosecution office, but it faces corruption too.
Well, it's an ongoing process. I think it so much depends on the political will and commitment. So in our case, every government, every prime minister was taking a lot of attention to the fight of the corruption. So it's not only like we established institutions, but there were a lot of attention from the politicians. But also it was a lot of attention from media, because we believe that media is really playing absolutely a critical voice, and we need to have, that's why, independent and free media. And media publicity, transparency played really a critical role in fighting the corruption. And not only fighting, but also doing preemptive work, educative work. So I would say that took time, but now we are really in a good shape.
Lithuanians Andrius Kubilius will be the first EU Commissioner for Defense. The new portfolio has been set up to strengthen the European defense capabilities because of the Russian aggression in Ukraine. Is the EU becoming a parallel military alliance, or is it only a complementary partner to NATO? What is your opinion?
I think when you read the mission letter of the Commissioner, because when the President von der Leyen assigned certain candidates certain portfolios, she wrote the mission letters, and in these mission letters they are pretty clearly written what she expects from each commissioner to deliver. So yes, Andrius Kubilius got first in European Union history this kind of a separate defense portfolio, defense and space. So my understanding is that we all need to strive to increase the defense industrial capability of European Union, because still a lot of member states are buying a lot of military industrial supplies and technologies and weapons not from the EU producers. So our EU defense industry is fragmented, not always competitive with other partners. So that's why the whole idea is that EU has to be like a supplier, supporter of what is necessary for the NATO and for NATO member states. So we need to have a good defense industrial base and not only create a defense industrial single market, but we also need to allocate a lot of financial support resources to develop that market. We need to increase as much as possible standards. We also need to increase and to clear problems in terms of the military mobility, because military mobility across the EU is still not an easy thing. It is already, a lot of things are being done, how to better allow military troops to move across Europe from one end to another one, but still more things have to be done. So I think it will not be a duplication, rather synergy between the EU, what EU can do for the overall security of European continent, and what we can help our militaries, armies to be better equipped with their modern and competitive technologies.
Okay, Mr. Shatunas, thank you for this interview.
Thank you very much.